Welcome back to Carvd podcast, where our positive news articles come to life. I'm your host, Nyesha Stone, and I'm also the founder of Carvd, your weekly source of positive news. Every Tuesday, I bring somebody on from around the world to talk about the positive things in their life, and we're going to continue doing just that. We have a financial advisor who's located in Atlanta, who's working for Northwestern Mutual. We have Imhotep, who's talking about who's going to be talking about financial literacy and specifically how the Black community can reach financial freedom. So, hello, Rush, how you doing?
Nyesha, what is going on, miss? Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. He's actually the first guest where I had to redo the intro. So new things every episode. So I appreciate you for your patience and for making time. So I read a little bit about your background. So before we talk about the financial advisor, you used to be a football captain. I want to talk about your experience in sports and if that at all has to do anything with what you do now.
Yeah, so funny thing, Nyesha, I actually lived in Wisconsin for I don't know how many months. The last team I was on, I was playing in Green Bay, Wisconsin for an indoor football team called the Green Bay Blizzard. So I had a few buddies from the Milwaukee area because I know that's not too far away. But to answer your question, it's definitely had an impact on my career and what I do on a day-to-day basis. Like I'm sure as many have said before me, the intangibles that come with playing a team sport like football are very transferable to, a professional environment, and that's the case. And then I think even past that, a lot of my experiences in trying to pursue a professional career, helped inform a lot of the skill sets and traits that I have now, right? As far as, being able to be persistent, resilient, understanding how to manage adversity, things like that. So it's helped me. It's helped me a ton. My football career, at least professionally, maybe not physically. My body is still a little beat up from it.
Oh, I hear about that a lot. The football players, that's why they tell us, keep telling our Black kids, maybe we should try something else because it does cause a lot of trauma to the body.
I literally, top of this year, Nyesha, I just got a stem cell shot done on my knee. Just
what is that?
cartilage. So they basically take blood out your body, they put it in a centrifuge, they concentrate white blood cells, and then they throw it right back into you. But the philosophy, and it's a pretty experimental surgery, I guess, if you want to call it that. But the philosophy is that your body can heal itself, and by putting in the concentrated version of those white blood cells, those stem cells, it helps accelerate that healing process. So right now, I'm doing everything I can to fight old age, even if it's experimental surgeries that your insurance doesn't even cover, and you have to come out of pocket for it. So it is what it is.
Oh, I definitely want to have a conversation about that outside of the podcast because that's very interesting.
Yeah, man. If you go down to Columbus, we'll talk about it after the podcast.
if we need to bring him back on and talk about that specifically, we will. But like I said earlier, he's from Northwestern Mutual, and so he's a financial advisor. And the reason I brought you on is, for one, I love Northwestern Mutual. Shout out to y'all. And then two, financial literacy has been a big topic. Shout out to Earn Your Leisure with their podcast and other people for the last few years. Why is it important for you to specifically be in your role and to help people like me, or even to make conversations with people like me when it comes to financial literacy?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, just really important, and it's really misunderstood, right? So, and really, that's really it. I mean, I wish I had more depth to it, but people don't know about it. But literally everything in life in some way has finances tied to it, right? Like this call, your podcast, where you live, how you feed yourself, how you provide for your family, how you pursue dreams and aspirations. A lot of these things have finances intertwined. And that's where there's the biggest dearth of knowledge, broadly speaking, I think both in our country and across the world. And it's an important concept that people need to be spending some time having dialogue around.
Yeah, well, let's dive into that dialogue. So when you're even trying to start a conversation about finances, like you just said, it involves everything from the food we eat to the clothes we wear, right? Yeah. So how do you just randomly, or not even randomly, but how do you begin to constantly have those conversations with people who don't necessarily always talk about finances, or, you know, specifically when we're younger, that's grown people business. Now that we older, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
what are taxes? What is this? So what are like
yeah,
some quick things or just things that anybody should know when they're starting off focusing on their finances?
got you. Yeah, I think that an answer to that question is twofold. One, I think the first thing people need to do is just connect the financial reality with whatever their goals and dreams and hopes and aspirations are, right? Because a lot of the times those can get disconnected. And then secondly, I think it really just boils down to understanding that fundamentally that you can really only do three things with money. You can save it, you can invest it, or you can spend it, right? And if you're not doing the saving or investing part, you're probably doing a lot of spending. So I think when people understand that if I'm not actively doing things with my money, then there's probably a good chance that there's slippage as far as what's happening after I get my paycheck. I've seen people really resonate with that concept.
No, I actually that just made me think about it. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I am
That's
doing
only
kind of this one, but I ain't really doing that one. So that means I'm doing more of that one.
exactly. You can only do three things. Once you get your check, you can save it or you can spend it. What are you gonna do? So
Yeah, I feel like the word or the term or the title financial advisor is used a lot. So like at
mhm.
the basics, what do you do within your role? And then
Yeah.
why join Northwestern Mutual?
Great questions. So, I mean, in my role specifically, Nyesha, we help our clients achieve some level of financial security by one, creating financial plans for them, and then two, vis-a-vis the implementation of various investment and insurance products and strategies and things like that. Now, as far as why Northwestern Mutual, I would say that Northwestern Mutual more or less chose me. Just continued backstory how I got here. I initially interned with Northwestern in 2015, and the person that recruited me into the internship was he was the managing part. Well, he was a big donor in Cornell's football team, where I played college football at, and then he was the managing partner of our New York office. So he brought me in. He allowed me to intern for the summer. I had a great experience. I just wasn't really completely sold on being an advisor yet, and I still had other aspirations, like athletic ones. Um, but that's kind of how I landed here, and why I still continue to be here is that Northwestern's a fantastic company, right? Especially the office that I'm at in Atlanta. They do a ton to support their advisors. They do a ton to support the community, and yeah, just I don't have enough great things to say about them.
No, I just visited their offices in Milwaukee, and I took
Mhm.
pictures there a few years ago, like at like the bottom floor, but I never like paid attention to like the rest of the building. And then I got a tour, and I'm like, this is a whole new.
Wow.
This is a city inside of a
In the
building.
city.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I've never seen the city in this way. But I'm glad that they basically like, you started that relationship and they like made you feel seen. I feel like a
Right.
lot of times companies miss out on talent because
Yeah.
they overlook a lot of people. I've been
Right.
getting a lot of no's from jobs lately, but somehow I still end up in the same room as them. So
Mhm.
you just keep pushing and you keep going and you'll definitely be seen. So congratulations to you for being seen and getting that position. So I want
I
to dive into
appreciate you.
Northwestern Mutual's culture because you talked about a little bit how
Mhm.
they really do support their team. But what does it feel like to work for a company that really does support you, whether it's emotionally, physically, financially? Because they in
Yeah.
Milwaukee they have a gym. They provide food. Like what does that do for you, and how does that affect your work on a day-to-day basis?
That's a great question. I think all of those forms of support that you mentioned are nice, and they're good to have. Right? It's cool to have a nice gym to go to. It's nice to have certain office amenities. But the most important thing is being able to being able to learn from the person next to you. And Northwestern has created this culture, really nationwide, where advisors are really engaged with each other and leveraging each other's skill sets and really taking information, and we're trading information with each other to help accelerate and advance their careers and their practices. And I think that's one thing that makes Northwestern distinctly different than if I worked at like a JP Morgan, for example. I'm not talking to guys on their trading desk in California for the most part, right? And I'm siloed in my New York office and the people that I'm with there. But when I think about the broad network of advisors that I speak with on a weekly basis, I have contacts in Florida, Texas, Milwaukee, California, et cetera, that they're a text message away, and usually those relationships are really productive.
Earlier you mentioned helping people, your clients, the people that you work with, start business plans. With me having my own business, that was like a huge thing. It's like you have to have a business plan. We still like working on ours, it's ever changing. But what goes into a good business plan? Like specifically for startups, because I know a lot or even entrepreneurs, because with the pandemic, I feel like a lot of businesses opened up, and specifically Black businesses. So what makes a good business plan?
I think having a concrete way of making money. And I know it's pretty simple, but of making or raising money, because some businesses, they're more so built on money they can get from grants and investments. But I think that's the biggest thing that I see people overlook is they want to start the business, they want to get the LLC, they have a great idea, but they don't really have a marketing or a sales strategy as far as, okay, how am I going to acquire and convert customers? And I think that's the biggest, that's the lifeblood of a business, right? Is you being able to have people that come and use your product or service. So I would say that's where the majority of time needs to be spent. And really everything else as it relates to a business plan can be largely outsourced to other people that can help you with that.
Yeah, I do agree. Having a business model makes a business. For the first 2 years, Carvd and Stone, I didn't see us as a business. I was just like, interviewing people. And then I joined the accelerator program, and they like, well, unless you make money, you have a hobby. And I'm like,
what?
I was like, oh no, y'all didn't. And I'm like, wait, what? I never even heard of the term business model. And I think that's where some of the confusion comes when it comes to financial literacy, because business model funding is the exact same thing. It's just how do you get the funding to your business? That's your business model, but we don't know the terminology. So now we're missing out. We can't connect those two. And I think that's a big thing. Like, how do we begin to learn that terminology? Like, I think that once we can like put a word to it, you can fully understand it. But it took me into going to an accelerator program to even learn literally business model. So how do we, start those conversations with our youth, or, educate them in that way?
I mean, I think you hit it on the head. It's just about going out and seeking the information, because I don't think it's not like the information is locked away, right? A lot of this is Googleable, if that's a word. Like you can say, hey, what is it? Or you can use Chat GPT now, right? And just say, hey, Chat, tell me what a business plan is. So I think that's the biggest thing, of just having a desire to seek the information out. And then as you seek the information, you probably want to connect with somebody that has some experience to help you vet out, what's real and kind of what's BS.
I shout out to the chat, the AI and stuff like that. A friend of mine introduced me to it. It has changed my life. That's dope. If y'all like, you can ask it any question, be like, what is this? Or can you write something like this? And it will produce stuff. So like, we need to get on. We learn how to use the technology so it don't use you. So that's what I'm trying to stay up on it.
Amen. You're right. No, you are right.
Going back just a few years to the beginning of the pandemic, and just overall when we were in the shutdown, were you at Northwestern Mutual during that time?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, so during that time, how did that affect how you interacted with your clients, specifically like how y'all went about doing a business plan? Because I know a lot of people had to pivot or scale down. So what were those conversations you were having like during that time?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody really got affected by the pandemic. With Northwestern specifically, and I know a lot of what we did prior to COVID was a lot more in-person meetings, right? A lot more time spent on the road going to see clients. And I've seen post-pandemic a lot of that transition to more conversations like this, where you can do things virtually or over the phone and things like that. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of businesses. But aside from that, I don't know how much has changed from a business perspective, in regards to what we do, or, the things that our clients are concerned about. There's always a new crisis somewhere or something going on. that, you know, you need to be ready for. And, you know, we're always trying to help our clients do the best to prepare and position themselves.
How do you best position yourself for the uncertainty? Because, you know, people was like, we should have prepared for the pandemic, but, you know, how do you prepare for something you didn't know was coming financially?
Yeah, well, you can't really prepare for a pandemic. It's tough. It's like once in a century type things. But yeah, I think you know, when you think about like some of the pillars of financial planning, you know, philosophically, a lot of what we focus on at Northwestern is risk management, right? And a big part of risk management is just having adequate savings so that if something like a pandemic was going to happen, you know, you have money to kind of weather the storm. So I think that's just a, you know, as you think about uncertainties in life, you know, usually there's a financial way to mitigate some of that risk, and thinking critically about how you can get to that endpoint is just, it's an area where you should definitely spend some time in addition to all the other things you have to think about.
So businesses, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
Yeah,
It's definitely worth it.
it's
And you don't
all
even have to be just a business, but, you know, just individuals, like your
yeah,
water heater might break or whatever. Whatever.
exactly. Need money in the bank, right?
Yes,
So
you trying to buy a new house. Nah, I definitely. So with you being in Atlanta, it's like the hotbed of, you know, Black businesses and Black
right.
entrepreneurship. What are some things Northwestern is doing when it comes to supporting, you know, the growth of, you know, Black entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I know we have I think we have an accelerator program where we've invested in a few Black-owned businesses. You know, we put venture capital there. And I believe we also do some things locally in the community. Like I know on every MLK Day, we'll go out to a school and, you know, we'll help support them as well. So there's a whole plethora of things we do. And then obviously by empowering advisors to go back into their communities and help them, I think that's probably the biggest accelerant, is by just, you know, if we're talking about how do we make people more financially literate, it's by literally making people financially literate and then tasking them with the duty of going and making others literate as well. So I think those are some of the big areas, but you know, we always have something going on.
This is true. They always do have something going on. Their name is
Yeah, no.
everywhere. Um,
Especially
I
in
know,
Milwaukee.
especially in Milwaukee. So if you ever come here, y'all gonna be like Northwestern Mutual, Northwestern Mutual. But you talked about, you know, a lot of things are Googleable, right?
Right.
When it comes to getting more information on finances, are there any books? Are there any authors? Are there any podcasts or anything, like any networks do you think that people could, you know, tap into?
Yeah. I mean, none that I'd probably recommend specifically, but if I had to give one a shout out to one, it's probably the Nyesha Stone, Carvd in Stone podcast for sure. But aside from that, you know, there's tons of financial information out there. I know you mentioned Earn Your Leisure earlier. I've been spending a ton of time there, but I know that they're doing great things, you know, for the community as far as, you know, helping people become more financially literate. You know, I know there are great authors out there, like I know Robert Kiyosaki. He's written a few books on finance that, you know, I can't personally endorse, but it's probably worth taking a look to see if it's something in there that would be helpful. But the information's out there, as you know, as we've talked about, and it's just really about just going out and getting it.
Go get the information, y'all. That's what I was taught in the accelerator program. If you want it, you got to go get it. And speaking of going getting it, just a few more questions. One being to those like a young person, maybe they're in inner city Milwaukee or whatever, but they're interested in entering the finance industry, whether that's being a financial advisor or working for corporate. Like, how does one begin to start a career in that? Even if they don't have any connections, or like, is it straight just go to school and that's it? Or like, what are some things that they should be doing to prepare them for what they want to accomplish?
I mean, I think one, just getting, I think about my path to Northwestern, you know, my first step was just getting engaged with my own financial situation, right? And just understanding what's going on there. You know, I've had, or we've had clients that have transitioned to advisors. So the first step for some people could be reaching out to a financial advisor and working with one to see if that would be something that, you know, you'd want to transition into later on in life. but I think past that, once you have a grasp on your own situation, the opportunities available to you, then just understanding how to take advantage of those things, right? So, whether it's, to your point, entering an accelerator program, or, whether it's, finding some financial institution that's doing a ton of community outreach, et cetera. I think those are some of the areas or on-ramps that people from less privileged communities could find their way into this industry.
No, I love that. What within your role, or just within like being in the finance industry, like what impact do you want to make? Like, I know you're at Northwestern Mutual, you're a financial advisor, but do you have like an end goal, or is there like a big something you want to like accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I want to be able to, obviously be able to support myself, because for the majority of my life, that was very challenging. And I want to be able to support my family, and make sure that they're taken care of. And then most importantly, I want to be able to support my communities that have helped support me, right? So I think about, some of the neighborhoods and areas I grew up in Detroit and Brooklyn, and even in some areas of Atlanta. I want to make sure I can have an impact in those places, where, the same support that I had as a kid growing up to put me in the position that I am today, I just want to make sure I could pay that forward.
I think that's so important. Thank you for, saying that, because I've had a lot of support. You had a lot of support. And if we don't do anything with that, then, we're being gatekeepers. And that's exactly. Not cool, like, at all. Cause it took us so much to get to where we are, because so many people have told us no. And so when we finally get in the room, we finally like right here. Okay. Oh, you need a financial advisor. Well, hey, I know someone. They may be able to lead you to someone. And so like, that's how you pass that knowledge on. No, I really, I really, really do love that. To anybody listening to this, what advice would you give to them about getting themselves out of debt? Like, I know you said, like, whether it's college debt, credit card debt, but they maybe just feel like they're drowning in it. Where do you begin? To how do you? Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that people largely have a misconception or misunderstanding around is how important interest rates are when it comes to debt. And interest rates, really, if you think about it, it's the cost of money, right? Because if you don't have to pay an interest rate on something, you're basically just getting free money. It's somebody just giving you some money. Versus if you have to pay them back with interest, now there's an associated cost there. And, when you look at consumer debt, like credit cards, you mentioned, could be a car note. You look at things like student loans, mortgages, et cetera. I think that people often don't think critically about how that affects their current financial situation. And, in plain English terms, if you're paying a really high interest rate on something, that's not going to be beneficial for you, short, medium, or long term, right? So if you're focused on getting out of debt, that would probably be one of the first areas that I start attacking is, okay, the money that's costing me the most, quote unquote, how can I begin to manage that area of my finances? That makes sense.
No, it does. I had a lot of credit card debt, investing into the company. And so I had nobody taught me this, but I was like, I am sending, my minimum was like $20, but I'm sending 100, right? But it's not going anywhere. And so something just told me, and I think I was like 19 at the time. And I'm like, just go look at like what you're paying for. And the interest rate, I swear to God, it was like
30-something%.
Dude, it was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And so what I ended up doing was I looked up a credit card. I looked up some credit cards that had that you could transfer the fee from one credit card for free. Yeah. And then you would have no interest rate for this amount of time, or it was a very, very low interest rate. I don't know how I thought about that or where that came across, but I was able to pay a few credit cards off. I got like 1 or 2 left. I'm working on them. But I was able to do that. And so like I feel like sometimes, like you said, we just accept what we're given and don't be like question like, why am I paying this much?
Yeah, exactly. We just don't understand it.
Yeah. And so we have to be the ones to be like, no, why? Why didn't you do this? Why is this not happening? And then once you can understand, I believe that's when you can really fix it. And one thing I just discovered was actually how much debt I do really have. So like literally how much business debt and how much personal debt. So I had a round number, but I never had an exact number. And when I looked at it, I was like, okay, so now I know what I'm aiming for. So at least literally knowing how much debt you have and then breaking it down to like, okay, I know for a fact I'm not going to touch this portion right now, but this one is attainable.
Yeah, this has to go. You're right. And I think the point that you're kind of referencing there, Nyesha, is that you have good debt and bad debt, right? You have debt that costs a lot, a high interest rate. You have debt that doesn't cost a lot, a low interest rate. So I think that just being able to tease out the two and have a strategy for attacking each bucket is really important.
You know what? I never even thought about good debt and bad debt, but it makes sense because, you know, you spend your Walmart card on like some chips, credit card, or, you know, you going to invest in maybe a laptop for your business. Like
exactly.
See,
it's
look,
good debt.
You're teaching me. You're teaching me. See, that's why we do. That's why I bring people on the podcast. All right. Well, how I end every interview is when people listen to this interview, what do you want them to get from it?
Yeah, that's a great question. What do I want them to get from it? Yeah, what did Marshawn Lynch say? You got to save your chicken, something like that. Mind your chicken. I'll probably say the same. Well, no, actually, I think the biggest takeaway is what we started with, right? Fundamentally, understand you can only do three things with money: save, invest, or spend it. And if you're not saving or investing, you're probably spending. So I think if you can walk around with that heuristic, that'll help you out tremendously.
I ain't gonna lie, that I'm telling you now, that has really changed my perspective on the on a lot of things. So thank you for coming on this podcast and teaching me. So if y'all are listening, this is the Carved in Stone podcast. Please make sure to visit us every Tuesday as I bring someone else around from the world to talk about positive things in their life. And always remember, in the end, everything will be carved in stone.